This conference will now be recorded.
So in the last class, we started with exception handling. The main use of going with exception handling is to avoid abnormal termination of application. Exception means it's a runtime error. Once it occurs, the remaining part of code will not get executed. And we have seen the try and catch block, and we have seen about exception hierarchy. And we are in two categories of exceptions like checked and unchecked. All runtime exceptions comes under as unchecked. Other than runtime exceptions, remaining all are checked exceptions, right? So in the last class, we have seen about checked exceptions. Today, let us move to the next one, runtime exceptions. So we'll be discussing today runtime exceptions, try with multiple catch blocks. Then we'll go with finally keyword and user defined exceptions. So today we complete the exception handling part. Now let us initially see about runtime exceptions. So what are runtime exceptions? The exceptions which occur during program execution are runtime exceptions. All runtime exceptions, for getting a runtime exception means all runtime exceptions are subclasses of runtime exception class. This point is very, very important. For getting a runtime exception means it's a subclass of which class? Runtime exception class. All runtime exceptions are categorized as unchecked exceptions. If you are getting a random exception means it's a subclass of random exception class and they are categorized as unchecked exceptions. Let us understand more on this using the program runtime exception demo. Open Eclipse. So we have created a package exceptions. Right click on exceptions package and say new class runtime exception demo. With main method inside. Now let us initially see about arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception. Already we know when we get arithmetic exception, when you divide any number by 0. If you divide any number by 0, then we get what? Arithmetic exception. Now see, when we run this piece of code, we are getting C, exception in thread main, java.lan.arithmetic exception divided by 0. Now how to handle this? We have tried the code in between, try and catch block. Handle means, remember, try and catch block. But in this program, I want to just elaborate in what situation which exception will come. When which runtime exception will come, I want to just elaborate only that part, not how to handle it. So if I want to show the next exception, since we are not handling, I'm going to keep this code in comments. The next one, array index out of bounds exception. If you take an array with some values inside, now when we write here in SOP, n of 2, what is the value at n of 2 index? 0, 1, 2. 2 index means 30. If you write n of 8 index, since this 8 is out of index for this array, we get the exception when we run array index out of bounds exception. Next one, string index out of bounds exception. If you take a string with a value hello, and when we are writing s dot character at 1 index. So what is the character at 1 index? E. But when you write character at 8 index, since 8 is out of index and since it is related to strings, we get the exception string index out of bounds exception. We are getting the string index out of bounds exception. The next one, simple negative array size exception. Negative array size exception. If you take an array and when we give the size of the array as a negative value, then we get negative array size exception. Next one, this is important, number format exception. Number format exception. If you take a string s equal to some xx and we want to convert into primitive integer. How to convert a string into primitive integer? By going with parsing. So when you do this parsing like integer dot parseInt of s, then since s value is some xx, I cannot convert this xx into number type. So when you are trying to convert a string into number type, which is not possible, then we get the number format exception. Right? Let me document these words. So when we get arithmetic exception, when we get arithmetic exception, trying to divide a number by 0. When you are dividing a number by 0, then we get what? Arithmetic exception. Next one, array index out of bounds exception. So when we get this one, trying to access an array element which is out of index. Is what? Out of index. So when you take an array, and when you are trying to access array element out of index, then we get what? Array index out of bounds exception. Next one, string index out of bounds exception. Trying to access a character of a string which is out of index. If you are trying to access a character of a string, see by using this character, right? If I am trying to access a character of string which is out of index, then we get string index out of bounds exception. Next one, simple, negative array size exception. So when we get negative array size, when the given array size is negative. Number format exception. So when we get trying to convert a string into number type, which is not possible. So we are trying to convert a string value with xx into number type, which is not possible. One more, we are having null pointer exception. So if you take a string s equal to null, this is not only for string, any object you take and if you assign to null, and by using this object, if you try to access the members of class, since here s is pointing to null, using this null reference, if you access any members of class, then we get null pointer exception. Let me keep this code in comments. When we run, it's a null pointer exception. So what is the next one? Null pointer exception. Trying to access members of a class when the object of the class is pointing to null. Right? Clear all of you? Any questions? No. The next one, try with multiple catch blocks. Try with what? Multiple catch blocks. The syntax is, we go with a try keyword, we go with a try, and we go with a set of statements like statement 1, statement 2, like that, statement n. Now, if you get exception in try block, we handle it using catch block with exception class. Since exception is superclass of all other classes, this one catch block can handle all the types of exceptions. This one catch block can handle all types of exceptions. Now, in this try block, there is a chance of getting multiple exceptions. Based on exception type, I want to handle. So based on exception type, I want to provide the message to the user. If I go with only one catch block exception, the message will remain same for all types of exceptions. Now based on exception type, I want to handle it. Exception type 1, we want to handle it. Like that. Exception type 2, we want to handle it. Exception type 3, we want to handle it. Like that. Exception type n, we want to handle it. So this we can understand when we write the complete code. Based on exception type, if you want to handle, we go with multiple catch blocks. So what is the point? It is used to provide proper message to the user based on the exception type. Let us understand with the complete code. Multiple catch demo. Right click on exceptions package and say new class, multiple catch demo. Here let us go with the try block. Here we write the code int n1 equal to integer dot parseInt args of 0. Again we are going with command line arguments. Integer n2 equal to integer dot parseInt args of 1. We are reading two command line arguments. We'll say int result equal to n1 by n2. Then we'll display the value of result. Now in this try block, which exceptions may occur? Anyone? Anyone respond? Which exceptions may occur here? It's very simple to identify. When we see slash operator division, so then your thinking should go to arithmetic exception. So why we get arithmetic exception? If the number 2 value is 0, if the argument what you are passing is 0, then we get arithmetic exception. Next, if you are using arrays, your thinking should go to array index out of bound exception. Why we get array index out of bound exception? We are reading two command line arguments. But if you pass only one argument or no arguments, and if you are trying to read, then we get array index out of bound exception. The next one, parsing. When you are doing parsing, number format exception. So why we get number format exception? When you give argument value as a string like XX, then we cannot convert into number type. Then we get number format exception. Now based on exception type, you handle it. If you are getting arithmetic exception, then we'll provide the message divided by 0, not allowed. If it is generating array index out of bounds exception, then we provide the message require two numbers. Compulsory we have to pass two numbers. If it is generating number format exception, then we provide the message enter only numbers. Based on exception type, we are providing message to the user. Now, can you guarantee we get only these three exceptions? No guarantee. So we are unable to identify the exception. So it can be any runtime exception, where we go with the message runtime exception occurred. It can be any type of exception. Any type of exception can be handled by exception class. Then we go with the message exception occurred. The last two catch blocks are suggested. It's only suggestion to use this last two catch blocks, optional to use. Let us run the code. How to run? To pass command line arguments, right click and say run as, run configurations. See the class which you want to run, that is multiple catch demo. Then say okay. Then in arguments, pass the argument values. Like if I pass 10 and 5, then we get result as 2. If you run the code again, if you pass the arguments as 10 and 0, so what is 10 by 0? Arithmetic exception. Then this exception will occur and this message will be provided. Now, if you run the code again, if you pass one argument or no arguments, then we get array index out of bound exception. Then see the message, it's generating require 2 numbers. Then next one, when you run, and if you provide the argument value as some XX, then it's going to generate number format exception. Then we get see the message enter only numbers. So based on exception type, when you want to provide the message to the user, proper message to the user, then we go with multiple catch blocks. Clear all of you this concept? Any questions? Here we are having one very important syntax rule. If you make first catch block as exception, then the last one like arithmetic exception, then see we are getting compile time error. The reason is the first catch block can handle all types of exceptions. See, all these are what? Subclasses of exception class. So this first catch block only can handle all types of exceptions. Then there is no meaning of writing these catch blocks. So the syntax rule is when you go with try with multiple catch block, the order of catch block cannot be from superclass to subclass. It cannot be from super to subclass. So what is the syntax rule here? And try with multiple catch blocks, the order of catch blocks cannot be from superclass to subclass. Any other order is fine, but it cannot be from super to subclass. The next one, finally keyword, a very simple concept, finally keyword or finally block. Finally block is executed irrespective of exception present in try block. Means irrespective means even there is an exception or no exception, your finally block will get executed. Like example, like syntax, we go with the try block and we go with some set of statements. If you get exception in try block, it will go to catch block and we handle the exception in catch block. For getting exception, we handle the exception in catch block. In finally block. In finally block, generally we do closing or cleanup operations. Closing or cleanup operations. Means in try block, if you get an exception, it will go to catch block and even finally block also. In try block, no exception. If no exception, it won't go to catch, but it will go to finally compulsory. So even exception occurs or does not occur, it will go to finally block. Let me elaborate more with an example. To go with a try block, in try block, we are doing a database connection. So this con object is connected to a database. After connecting to the database, we are doing some transactions on the database. We are doing some transactions on the database means inserting a record or updating a record, deleting something like that. We are doing some transactions on the database. Once all transactions are completed, we do the closing operation. It's always a good practice to do the closing operation. In try block, if you get an exception, we go to catch block and we handle the exception. In catch block, we handle the exception. Let us suppose in transaction 2 we got an exception. If you get an exception in transaction 2, will the closing operation happens now? No, because once you get exception in try block, the control will jump to catch block, handles the exception and comes down. The remaining part of code will not get executed. So the closing operation will not happen now. But the point is, even exception occurs or does not occur, I want to do the closing operation. Even exception occurs or does not occur, I want to do the closing operation. Then we keep this closing operation in finally block. When we write this closing operation in finally block, even exception occurs or does not occur, your closing will happen compulsory. So more about this finally block I'll be showing practically when we come to the topic JDBC. So when I discuss JDBC, I'll be showing all these codes practically to you totally. I'll rediscuss on this finally block once again. Clear all of you? Any questions? Now, let us move to the next one. User defined exceptions. Even we call custom exceptions. When you see the word custom, they are what? User defined. How to go with user defined exception is, user defined exceptions are created by creating a class which is a subclass of exception class. Just we have to create a class and which is a subclass of which class? Exception class. Like example, we just go with a class like myException, any name, and should be a subclass of exception. And here we write the code, we go with a constructor which takes string message as argument, means the message what you want to display for your exception, and we give that message to the superclass. How to give the message to the superclass? By using this super. By using super. Right? Now, and whenever a class contains a parameterizer constructor, it's always suggested to create a default constructor. Let me elaborate this using the program. Create a user defined exception. Create a user defined exception. Age exception. Age exception. Create a class. Create a class customer with a method set age. Create a class customer with a method set age, which takes age as an argument. Which takes what? Age as an argument. Now, if the age is less than 18 or greater than 60, then it should throw age exception with the message age should be between 18 and 60. Our own exception name, our own messages. So that's the meaning of custom exceptions. Now, let us write the complete code. Custom exception demo. Right click on exceptions package and say new class custom exception demo. Here in this one, let us create a class age exception. How to create user defined exceptions? Just to create a class and should be a subclass of exception class. Okay. Here we have to go with a constructor which takes string message as argument, and that message we give it to the superclass constructor using super in a default constructor. That's it. User defined exception is ready to use. Now create a class customer with a method setAge, which takes age as an argument. Then we have to check now if age is less than 18 or if age is greater than 60, then we have to throw age exception. So whenever you want to throw an exception, we use a keyword throw, and we have to throw the object of age exception. How to throw object here? New age exception. And what is the message? Age should be between 18 and 60. When you say here, throw new age exception. So to the throw keyword, we have to give the object of age exception. This message will come and store into this message argument, which I'm giving to the superclass constructor. Else means if the age is valid, then we'll display your age, the value of age. Now understand carefully. In a method, when we use throw keyword to throw an exception, the syntax rule is for that method we have to say throws, we have to specify throws, and the exception what you are throwing. It's a syntax rule. Again repeating, in a method, when we use throw keyword to throw an exception, for that method we have to specify throws, the exception what you are throwing. It's a syntax rule. Coming to main method. Now, here we create object of customer equal to new customer, then call the method c.setAge and we will pass 12. See, we are getting error here. The reason is checked exception. What is checked exception? I said whenever we call a method and if the method is throwing some exception, see here, this setAge method is throwing some exception, then we have to call this method in between try and catch block or throws keyword. So whenever we call a method and if the method is throwing some exception, we have to call this method in between try and catch block. Right? And print the object here. Now see, when we run, since we pass it age as 12, so this condition will be true and it's going to throw this age exception. So it's throwing, see, age exception with our message, age should be between 18 and 60. our own exception names, our own messages. Clear all of you? Any questions? Right? Now, so before we proceed further, let me go with one small concept here. ToString method. ToString method. Let me elaborate this with the program. ToString demo. ToString demo. Now, here let us take a class product with product ID and product name. And let me go with a constructor which takes product ID and product name as arguments. And we'll say this dot PID equal to PID, this dot PName equal to PName, and a default constructor. Right? Now, in the main method, let us create object of product class. I'm creating object of product class, and we are passing the product ID and product name. Product ID and product name. Now let us print the object directly. I'm printing object in SOP. This line is important now. When you print object in SOP, see the result what we get. It's printing the class name along with some number, some number. This we call hash code. So whenever we print object in SOP, this output we are going to get. And who is taking care of displaying this output? It's who is taking care here? ToString. So whenever we print object in SOP, whenever we print an object in SOP, it's going to invoke which method? ToString method. It's going to invoke ToString method. Then in product class, do I have any ToString method? No. Then product class extends which class? Product class extends which class? Product class extends. If you take a class and if you are not extending any class, it extends which class? Very good, object. It extends object. Since there is no ToString method in product class, this ToString method is invoked from which class? Object class. So ToString method belongs to object class. And the object class ToString method, what it's going to return? The class name along with hash code. The class name along with what? Hash code. Now, see what are the points? When an object is displayed in SOP, ToString method is invoked implicitly. ToString method is invoked implicitly. The ToString method belongs to object class. ToString method belongs to which class? Object class. The ToString method of object class returns the class name along with the hash code of an object. Hash code is like an address, but I cannot go to that address and modify the content. That is not possible in Java. So ToString method of object class returns the class name along with hash code of an object. Then, is this output, is it readable format? No, it's not in readable format. So I don't want to go to ToString method of object class. Invokes which method here? ToString method implicitly. So if there is no method, if there is no ToString method in product class, it's going to object class. So if I don't want to go to base class methods, when we want to change the implementation of base class methods, then what is the solution? Override. So we have to override the ToString method in your class. So where we written product ID, the value of PID, slash a new line, product name, the value of P name. So whenever you print object in SOP, ensure that for that class, whichever the class object you print, in that class, you go with what? ToString method. That's a simple point to remember. See, now when we run, we get the readable output now. So what is the point? In order to represent the object value in string or readable format, we need to override ToString method in the class. You need to override which method? ToString method in the class. Simple way to remember, whenever you print objects in SOP, you are thinking should go to which method? ToString method. Got it, all of you? I'll be keep on discussing this method so many times, so many places I'll be referring to this ToString, so you'll automatically understand about this concept. Now, coming to the next one, methods of throwable class. So throwable is what? It's the topmost class in exception hierarchy. So the methods present in throwable class is ToString method. ToString method belongs to object class and it is overridden, and this method is overridden in throwable class. So what is the use of this? Returns the object value in string format. Here in our program custom exception demo, we are printing object in SOP. So when you print object in SOP or ACP, whatever it may be, who is taking care of printing output in this format? It's returning the class name and the message. Who is taking care of printing the output in this format? Your ToString method invokes ToString method implicitly. ToString method will get invoked automatically. So ToString method of throwable class is taking care of printing the exception in this string format. We're having one more method, get message. Returns a message of exception. I want to see only the message of exception. I'm not worried about exception name. I want to see only the message of exception. Then we call the method. E dot get message. When you call the method e dot get message, it returns what? Only the message of your exception. One more important method, void print stack trace. Displays the root cause of exception. Displays what? Root cause of exception. Here. When you want to know the complete details of your exception along with the line embeds, then we call the method e.print stack trace. It's going to return the exception name, exception message, and the line numbers also. Where the exception is coming along with the line numbers, it's going to generate, so that we can go to the respective line number and rectify the problem. So complete details about your exception, it's going to generate by using this method print stack trace. Clear all of you these three methods? ToString, get message, and print stack trace. These methods are present in throwable class. Got it? Any questions? No. So we are having one more important question. What is the difference between final keyword, finally keyword, and finalize method? finalize. So out of this already I discussed it too, and we are having one more finalize. So finally keyword already we know. Final keyword. What is final keyword? When we use final keyword for a variable, value of the variable cannot be modified. If you are using the final keyword for method, it cannot be overridden. We cannot override finalize methods. Then if you use final keyword for a class, it cannot be subclass, no subclasses. Right? That's about final keyword. These three are nowhere related here. Okay, but they'll ask this question. Then finally, keyword already we have seen. So what is finally? Keyword or block? What is that? Finally, block is executed irrespective of exception of present in try block. It is used in exception handling concept. It's used in exception handling concept, and it is mainly used to do the cleanup or closing operations. But when it is invoked, finally block is executed irrespective of exception present in try block. Okay. Then coming to the next one, finalize method. Finalize method. This is also it is used to do the cleanup or closing operations. It's also for same purpose. Looks similar, but when it is invoked, that is the main thing. It is invoked just prior to the garbage collection. So before it goes to the garbage collection, this method will get invoked automatically. This method, it is invoked just prior to the garbage collection implicitly. We need not invoke this method. It's going to invoke prior to the garbage collection. Clear, all of you? Clear, Vinay?
Yeah, yes.
Right? So this point is important here. This point is important. This point. So even exception occurs or does not occur, it will be invoked. But it's mainly related to exception handling concept. But this is anywhere we can use. In a class, if you just create finalize method, then here also we do cleanup or closing operations. Before it goes to garbage collection, this method will get invoked. Got it?
Yes.
Right. Coming to assignment and exceptions. Create a user defined class, user defined exception, withdraw exception. Create a class account with a method withdraw, which takes amount and balance as arguments. If the amount is greater than balance, then it should throw withdraw exception with a message insufficient balance. insufficient balance. Okay, so our own exception name, our own messages. So try to write this code. It's very simple one. Then in tomorrow's class, we'll be starting off with a new topic, multi-threading. So in our core Java, we are left out with, I'm saying about only core Java. In core Java, we are left out with multi-threading. This will take 2 classes. Then collections. This will take 2 classes. Then Java 8 version features will take 1 class. IO package 1 class. SQL concepts 1 class, and finally JDBC 1 class. These are the topics left out related to core Java. So after core Java, we go with web technologies, then advanced Java, then frameworks. Like that, it continues. So once I complete core Java, I'll be elaborating about what topics are left out in our codes and how many days it's going to take. Okay. So thank you all. Thank you very much. And yeah, yes, please.
Hi Raj, how about the concept like exception propagation and then some rules like in terms of inheritance, like if a subclass is extending some exception and the base class cannot throw some exception, some rules are there, right?
Right. So it will just go to the superclass. If the exception is not handled in a method, then it will be given to the base class method. Like example, we are having main method. In main method, we are calling XXX method, right? We are having one more method, YYY. In YYY, we are invoking XXX method. Okay. So in this YYY method, the exception is unable to handle. If the exception is unable to handle, then since you are calling XXX method, it will go to this XXX method, and the exception is handled by your XXX method. It is handled by your XXX method. Means if the exception is unable to handle, in a method, then it will be given to the other method where it has been invoked. It will be given to the other method to handle that exception. That concept only we call exception propagation. Exception propagation. What is exception propagation? If the exception is unable to handle in a method, then it will be propagated. It will be propagated to the method where it has been invoked. Means if the exception is not handled in YYY method, then it will be propagated to XXX method to handle the exception. So that concept only we call exception propagation. Clear, Sindhu?
Yes, Raj.
Right? Right. And some more rules we are having, like exceptions in inheritance. Like if you are having class base, with a method XXX throws IO exception. Some code. Having class derived extends base class derived extend space. So we are overriding the method. We are overriding the method and we are throwing IO exception. We are throwing what here? IO exception. So this is valid only. Whatever the exception it is throwing, if I am throwing the same exception, then it is valid only. It is valid. Now, if I take a method xxx and I'm not throwing any exception, this is also valid only. If I'm not throwing any exception also, it is valid only. But if I override the method and if I'm throwing the exception like exception, then this will go with what? Exception also. I think this is valid only. Let me take a simple example. Exception test. Here we are having class base with the method xxx throws IO exception. Throws IO exception. Just import the package for this. Now we are having class derived extends base, class derived extends base, and we are overriding the method xxx. So is it giving any error here? No error. This is valid only. This is valid. Now, if I go with a method xxx and throwing same like base class, okay, this is also valid only. This is also valid. Now, if you go with method xxx throws exception, it's throwing exception. See now, it's going with errors here. It cannot throw superclass. Whatever the exception your base class method is throwing, it cannot throw the superclass exception. Any other things are valid, but it cannot throw the superclass of this IO exception. So this will go with what? See, error. Clear? This rule, Sindhu, all of you? Right? So whatever the exception, if the base class is throwing, your overridden method should not throw the exception which is superclass of base class exception. So what is the point? The overridden method should not throw the exception, which is superclass of the base class method exception, which is superclass of what? The base class method exception. Clear this point, all of you? These are some of the rules here. Right?
Can it throw subclass, right? Like
subclass no issues. Only this is the problem. Only this is the error. Remaining all are valid on. Remaining all cases are valid. Subclass it cannot. It can throw also. No problem. Okay. Only superclass it cannot throw. Any other things are valid. Got it?
Suppose if I interchange the exceptions, the first one is exception.
Except. No worries. This is valid only. This will become valid only. No worries. Okay. Only the rule is, this is the rule. It cannot throw superclass. It cannot throw superclass. Got it?
Yeah.
Right? So any other formats are valid only. Only superclass is not valid. Got it? See here, you can check it here. So base class method we said exception. So this, if I remove this, so it's valid only. right? If I remove this is also valid only, right? Even if I remove this is also valid only. Got it?
If I don't throw any exception in the base class, then only in the subclass I want to throw.
In the base class, you are not throwing. Here, we are getting errors here. You cannot throw. So if the base class method is not throwing any exception, then overridden also should not throw any exception. So what is one more point? If the base class method is not throwing any exception, then the overridden method should not throw any exception. Got it? Right? So I'll be discussing this point more when we come to multi-threading also. I'll be discussing these points in the multi-threading. Got it?
Yeah, Raj. Yeah, it's clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? I'll be in multi-threading, I'll be asking this question, then you will be totally clear why this rule is followed. Right. Yeah. So thank you very much and see you tomorrow with multi-threading topic. Yeah. Thank you all.